Thundercloud, washing away the garbage, leaving rainbows after rains. Let's have some fun and linguistic games. Everyone knows Mum calls me James, washing away the garbage, leaving rainbows after rains. Did I already say that? I don't care. We're here. We're there. Seahorse Medicine Cafe. Today, it's Chillin Tuesday, the 18th of not May, but June. G'day. Hey, we're working on our way through some Banjo Paterson poetry once again from Singer of the Bush. The Banjo Paterson Complete works from 1885 to 1900. And tonight I'm going to be working on 1889 and 1890. And out of that year come two of Banjo's more famous poems, Clancy of the Overflow, and also, yes, wait for it. Have you guessed it? Have a guess. Write in the comments what it is and I'll tell you after we do the first poem. Look, it's the 18th of June, as I said earlier, 2024. And we may as well start with the weather here in Guyra because it is, after all, it is Chillin Tuesday and we are chillin' in the cold. Let's begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we broadcast, to acknowledge their continuing connection to the land of the elders past and present. Let's also acknowledge and pay homage to all our servicemen and women who fought and died for the way, for our lifestyle that we live today in Australia. Thank you very much. Right, Guyra, it's currently 4.2 in Guyra. Feels like, well, 0.2 degrees Celsius, that is. The wind's at 13 kilometres an hour. That's gusts, but it's actually just breeze. Humidity's at 98%. We're heading for a minimum overnight of -2 degrees Celsius, and tomorrow a top of 10 degrees with no rain coming. There'll be frosts in the morning from about 1 a.m. and we're looking at, even though it's going to get down to -2, it is going to feel like -8 in the morning. So it's going to be quite chilly weather. But it is going to be a beautiful sunny day. So if you are out there in the sun, out of the wind, you will be able to stay warm as long as you can stick your hands down your pants to warm them up. Rightio, let's get on with some Banjo Paterson. The first one I've got for you is called Tar and Feathers. Oh, the circus swooped down on the Narrabri town for the Narrabri populace Munidar, and the circus man smiled at the folk he beguiled to calm all the distance from Gunnedah. But a juvenile smart who objected to part went in on the nod, and to do it he crawled in through a crack in the tent at the back, for the boy had no slight ingenuity. Says he with a grin, that's the way to get in, but I reckon I'd better be quite all. They'll splifficate me, and he chuckled, for he had the loan of the circus proprietor. But the showman astute on that wily galoot soon dropped, and you'll say that he leathered him. Not he with a grin, sort of humorous whim. He took him and tarred him and feathered him. Says he, you can go as a star with Jojo and knock every Injun and Arabri with your name and your trade on the posters displayed. The feathered, what is it, from Narrabri. Next day, for his freak, by a Narrabri beak, he was jawed with a deal of verbosity, for his only appeal was professional zeal. He wanted another monstrosity. Said his worship, begob, you are fined 40 bob, and 6 shillings cost the clerk, he says. Yet the Narrabri joy, half burden, half boy, has a down on himself and on circuses. That was written in the Bulletin, published in the Bulletin on the 21st of September 1889. And the original illustrations in this are by Livingston Hopkins, and I'll show you them. There we go. Look at that. There you see. Boom. Next one. How McGuinness went missing. Let us cease our idle chatter. Let the tears bedew our cheek. For a man from Tallangatta has been missing for a week. Where the roaring flooded Murray covered all the lower land, there he started in a hurry with a bottle in his hand. And his fate is hid forever. But the public seem to think that he slumbered by the river neath the influence of drink. And they scarcely seem to wonder that the river wide and deep never woke him with its thunder, never stirred him in his sleep, as the crashing logs came sweeping and their tumult filled the air. Then McGuinness murmured, sleeping, "'Tis awake in all Kildare." So the river rose and found him sleeping softly by the stream, and the cruel waters drowned him ere he wakened from his dream. And the blossom-tufted wattle blooming brightly on the lea saw McGuinness and the bottle going drifting out to sea. That was published in the Bulletin on the 21st of September 1889. All right, the next one I'm going to do for you is Mulligan's Mare. It's a story about a racehorse or two and a race. But first, I'd like you to ask you one favour. I'd like you to give this a thumbs up down below, and if you can, leave a comment and tell me what's your favourite poem of Banjo Paterson and what you'd like to hear. Thank you. All right, before I get on with Mulligan's Mare, let's intersperse with one of my own Thundercloud poems. This one was written sometime today. It's about filters. You know, the ones that you put on your camera. Filters, freaking ugly, foolish fake mask, pretending you're beautiful when your face looks like an ass. Filters, red flags, eyeliner and lipstick, anxious false personality with a makeup case of tricks. Filters, big eyes, lips, smooth skin, not even worth a conversation to find what insecurities lay within. Filters, tattoo ink, blue-stained projection, filters are for fitting in and for those with fear of rejection. I say I have no filter, no makeup on tonight. Well, I have my beard. A beard is a man's jewels, isn't it? Yeah, you know what they say, if your dad doesn't have a beard, you've got two mums. Well, I don't say that. That's what the Beards say, you know, that band from South Australia. Yeah. All right, let's get on with Mulligan's Mare. It's about a horse. Oh, Mulligan's Bar was the deuce of a place to drink and to fight and to gamble and race. The height of choice spirits from near and from far were all concentrated on Mulligan's Bar. There was Jerry the Sewell and the jockey boy Ned. Dog bite me, so called from the shape of his head. And a man whom the boys, in their musical slang, designed as the gaffer of Mulligan's gang. Now, Mulligan's gang had a racer to show, a bad un to look at, a good un to go. Whenever they backed her, you safely might swear she'd walk in a winner, would Mulligan's Mare. But Mulligan, having some radical views, neglected his business and got on the booze. He took up with runners, a treacherous troop who gave him away, and he fell in the soup. And so it turned out on a fine summer's day, a bailiff turned up with a writ of fife. He walked to the bar with a manner serene. "I levy," he said, "in the name of the Queen." Then Mulligan wanted, in spite of the law, to pay out the bailiff with one to the jaw. He drew out to hit him, but ere you could wink, he changed his intentions and stood him a drink. A great consultation there straightway befell, twixt jockey boy Neddy and Jerry the Swell, and the man with his head, who remarked, "Why you bet? Dog bite me," said he, "but we'll diddle them yet. We'll slip out the mare from her stall in a crack and put in her place the old broken down hack. The hack is so like her, I'm ready to swear the bailiff will think he has Mulligan's mare. So, out with the racer and in with the screw. We'll show him what Mulligan's talent can do, and if he gets nasty and dares to say much, I'll knock him as stiff as my grandmother's crutch." Then off to the town went the mare and the lad. The bailiff came out, never dreamt he was had, but marched to the stall with a confident air. "I levy," said he, "upon Mulligan's mare." He's going to take it, is he? He never would let her go out of his sight. He watched her by day and watched her by night, for races were coming away in the west, and Mulligan's mare had a chance with the best. And thinking to quietly serve his own ends, he sent off a wire to some bookmaking friends. "Get all you can borrow, beg snavel or snare, and lay the whole lot against Mulligan's mare." The races came round, and a crowd on the course were laying the mare till they made themselves hoarse. And Mulligan's party, with ardour intense, they backed her for pounds and for shillings and pence. And think of the grief of the bookmaking host at the sound of the summons to go to the post. For down to the start with her thoroughbred air, as fit as a fiddle, pranced Mulligan's mare. They started and off went the boy to the front. He cleared out at once and he made it the hunt. He steadied us round the corner they wheeled, then gave her head and she smothered the field. The race put her owner right clear of his debts. He landed a fortune in stakes and in bets. He paid the old bailiff the whole of his pelf and gave him a hiding to keep for himself. So all you bold sportsmen, take warning, I pray. Keep clear of the running. You'll find it don't pay, for the very best rule that you'll hear in a week is never to bet on a thing that can't speak. And whether you're lucky or whether you lose, keep clear of the cards and keep clear of the booze, and fortune in season will answer your prayer and send you a flyer like Mulligan's mare. And that was first published in the Bulletin on the 23rd of November, 1889. Okay, the next one I've got for you is called Song of the Future by Banjo Paterson. 'Tis strange that in a land so strong and bold in mighty youth, we have no poet's voice of truth to sing for us a wondrous song. Our chiefest singer yet has sung in wild, sweet notes a passing strain, to carelessly and sadly flung to that dull world he thought so vain. I care for nothing good nor bad, my hopes are gone, my pleasures fled. I am but sifting sand, he said. What wonder Gordon's songs were sad? And yet, not always sad and hard. In cheerful mood and light of heart, he told the tale of Britomart, who wrote the rhyme of Joyous Guard. And some have said that nature's face to us is always sad, but these have never felt the smiling grace of waving grass and forest trees on sunlit plains as wide as seas. A land where dull despair is king, o'er scentless flower and songless birds, But we have heard the bellbirds ring their silver bells at eventide, like fairies on the mountainside, the sweetest note man ever heard. The wild thrush lifts a note of mirth, the bronze-winged pigeons call and coo. Beside their nests the long day through, the magpie warbles clear and strong, a joyous, glad, thanksgiving song for all God's mercies upon earth. And many voices such as these are joyful sounds for those to tell, who know the bush and love it well with all its hidden mysteries. We cannot love the restless sea that rolls and tosses to and fro, like some fierce creature in its glee for human weal or human woe. It has no touch of sympathy. For us the bush is never sad, its myriad voices whisper low in tones the bushmen only know, its sympathy and welcome glad. For us the roving breezes bring from many a blossom-tufted tree, where wild bees murmur dreamily the honey-laden breath of spring. We have no tales of other days, no bygone history to tell. Our tales are told where campfires blaze at midnight, when the solemn hush of the vast wonderland, the bush, hath laid on every heart its spell. Although we have no songs of strife, of bloodshed reddening the land, we yet may find achievements grand within the bushman's quiet life. Lift ye your faces to the sky, ye far blue mountains of the west, who lie so peacefully at rest, enshrouded in a haze of blue. 'Tis hard to feel that years went by before the pioneers broke through your rocky heights and walls of stone and made your secrets all their own. For years the fertile western plains were hid behind your sullen walls, your cliffs and crags and waterfalls, all weather-worn and tropic rains. Between the mountains and the sea, like Israelites with staff in hand, and the people waited restlessly. They looked towards the mountains old and saw the sunsets come and go with gorgeous golden afterglow that made the west a fairyland, and marvelled what that west might be of which such wondrous tales were told. For tales were told of inland seas, like sullen oceans, salt and dead, and sandy deserts white and wan, where never trod the foot of man, nor bird went winging overhead, nor ever stirred a gracious breeze to wake the silence with its breath, the land of loneliness and death. At length, the hardy pioneers by rock and crag found out the way, and woke with voices of today, and silence kept for years and years. Upon the western slope they stood and saw a wide expanse of plain, as far as eye could stretch or see, go rolling westward endlessly. The native grasses, tall as grain, were waved and rippled in the breeze from boughs of blossom-laden trees. The parrots answered back again. They saw the land that it was good, a land of fatness all untrod, and gave their silent thanks to God. The way is one, the way is one, and straightway from the barren coast there came a westward marching host, that aye and ever onward pressed with eager faces to the west along the pathway of the sun. The mountains saw them marching by. They faced all-consuming drought. They would not rest in settled land, but taking each his life in hand, their faces ever westward bent, beyond the farthest settlement, responding to the challenge cry of better country further out. And lo, a miracle! the land, but yesterday was all unknown. The wild man's boomerang was thrown, where now great busy cities stand. It was not much, you say, that these should win their way where none withstood. In sooth, there was not much of blood. No war was fought between the seas. It was not much, but we who know the strange capricious land they trod, at times a stricken parching sod, at times with raging floods beset, through which they found their lonely way, are quite content that you should say, it was not much, while we can feel that nothing in the ages old, in song or story written yet, in Grecian urn or Roman arch, though it should ring with clash of steel, could braver histories unfold than this brush story yet untold, the story of their westward march. But times are changed, and changes rung from old to new, the olden days, the old bush life and its ways, are passing from us all unsung. The freedom and the hopeful sense of toil that brought due recompense of room for all has passed away, and lies forgotten with the dead. Within our streets men cry for bread in cities built but yesterday. About us stretches wealth of land, a boundless wealth of virgin soil, as yet unfruitful and untilled. Our willing workmen, strong and skilled, within our cities idle stand and cry aloud for leave to toil. The stunted children come and go in squalid lanes and alleys black. We followed but the beaten track of other nations, and we grow in wealth for some, for many, woe. And it may be that we who live in this new land apart, beyond the hard old world, grown fierce and fond, and bound by precedent and bond, may read the riddle right and give new hope to those who dimly see that all things may be yet for good, and teach the world at length to be one vast united brotherhood. So it may be, and he who sings in accents hopeful, clear and strong, the glories which that future brings, shall sing indeed a wondrous song. Banjo Paterson's Song of the Future. The next one's called An Idyll of Dandaloo. On western plains, where shade is not neath summer skies of cloudless blue, where all is dry and all is hot, there stands the town of Dandaloo, a township where life's total sum is sleep diversified with rum. Its grass-grown streets with dust are deep, 'twere vain endeavour to express the dreamless silence of its sleep in wide expansive drunkenness. The yearly races mostly drew a lively crowd to Dandaloo. There came a sportsman from the east, the eastern land where sportsmen blow, and brought with him a speedy beast as horses go. He came afar in hope to do the little town of Dandaloo. Now this was weak of him, I rot, exceeding weak it seemed to me, for we in Dandaloo were not the jugginses we seemed to be. In fact, we rather thought we knew our book by heart in Dandaloo. And now it seems we have to be cleaned out by this here Sydney bloke with his imported horse, and he will scoop the pool and leave us broke. Shall we sit still and make no fuss while this chap climbs all over us? The racers came to Dandaloo, and all the cornstalks from the west, on every kind of moke and screw, came forth in all their glory rest. The stranger's horse, as hard as nails, looked fit to run for New South Wales. He won the race by half a length, quite half a length it seemed to me, but Dandaloo with all its strength roared out, "Dead heat," most fervently, and after hesitation meet, the judge's verdict was dead heat. And many men there were could tell what gave that verdict extra force. The stewards and the judges, well, they had all backed the second horse. For things like this they sometimes do in larger towns than Dandaloo. They ran it off. The stranger won, hands down, by rear 100 yards. He smiled to think his troubles done, but Dandaloo held all the cards. They went to scale, and cruel fate, his jockey turned out underweight. Perhaps they'd tampered with the scale, I cannot tell, I only know it weighed him out all right. I failed to paint that Sydney sportsman's woe. Said he, the stewards were a crew of low-lifed thieves in Dandaloo. He lifted up his voice, irate, and swore till all the air was blue. So then we rose to vindicate the dignity of Dandaloo. "Look here," said we, "you must not poke such oaths at us poor country folk." We rode him softly on a rail, we shied at him in careless glee some large tomatoes, rank and stale, and eggs of great antiquity. Their wild, unholy fragrance flew about the town of Dandaloo. He left the town at break of day. He led his race horse through the streets, and now he tells the tale, they say, to every racing man he meets, and Sydney's sportsmen all eschew the atmosphere of Dandaloo. That was published on the 21st of December, 1889 in the Bulletin. Well, here I am in Seahorse Medicine Cafe, and I'm drinking out of my Australian Poetry Hall of Fame mug, which you can get from australianpoetryhallofFame.com.au on our website under our web store. Then you can order them and get them, and they're pretty cool actually, and there's a whole range of them. Plus other merchandise, including t-shirts, hats, poet hats, you name it, it's there. Probably not, but there's a lot of stuff there anyway. And that's one way you can support the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame in Guyra. Yes, and the work I'm doing to promote Australian poetry and celebrate Australian poets. Coming up on the 23rd of June 2024, this Sunday, we've got Ash Grunwald coming here to the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame. Tickets are $50. Bookings online only and on the door on the day if there are any tickets left. But the link is in the description below. And while you're looking below, well, it's over there if you're on an iPad. Pardon me. While you're looking down there, make sure you give this video a thumbs up and you leave a comment of what's your favourite Banjo Paterson poem that you'd like to hear. Yeah, go on. Write it down there now. Coming to Guyra in August, we've got the Australian Poetry Slam Heat. So if you're a poet and you would like the opportunity to perform at, well, the Sydney Opera House, imagine that. Yes, get your entry in and get into the Australian Poetry Slam Heat in Guyra. And if you're one of the two winners, then you'll get to perform in the state final in the Sydney Opera House. Won't that be amazing? So this is your opportunity. It's the 14th and 15th of August. Check it out. Don't forget, the Australian Poetry Film Festival is currently running. Submissions are available on filmfreeway.com/Australian Poetry Film Contest. And all you need to do is get your phone and phone yourself, video yourself making a poem, a bush poem or a normal poem or any kind of poem, or get your friends to do it, or get a videographer or a film person to make a really good professional film, because the more professional it is, then the more likely it is to win. Yeah. The Australian Poetry Film Contest. Check it out. Links in the description below, along there with the Ash Grunwald tickets and everything else that I'm talking about. Okay. The Scapegoat is the next one, by Banjo Paterson. We have all of us read how the Israelites fled from Egypt with Pharaoh in eager pursuit of them, and Pharaoh's fierce troop were all put in the soup when the waters rolled softly o'er every galoot of them. The Jews were so glad when old Pharaoh was had, that they sounded their timbrels and capered like mad. You see, he was hated from Jordan to Cairo, whence comes the expression to buck against Pharaoh. For 40 long years, midst perils and fears in deserts, with never a tramline to follow by, the Israelite horde went roaming abroad, like so many sundowners out on the wallaby. When Moses, who led 'em and taught 'em and fed 'em, was dying, he murdered a rorty old hoss you are. I give you a command of the whole of the band, and handed the government over to Joshua. But Moses told him before he died, wherever you are, wherever betide, every year as the time draws near, by lot or by rote, choose you a goat. And let the high priest confess on the beast the sins of the people, the worst and the least. Lay your sins on the goats. Sure the plan ought to suit you, because all your sins are his troubles in future. Then lead him away to the wilderness black, to die with the weight of your sins on his back. Of thirst let him perish alone and unshriven, for thus all your sins be absolved and forgiven. 'Tis needless to say, though it reeked of barbarity, this scapegoat arrangement gained great popularity. By this means a Jew, whate'er he might do, though he burgled or murdered and cheated at loo, or meet on Good Friday a sin most terrific 8, could get his discharge like as bankrupt certificate. Just here, let us note, did they choose their best goat? It's food for conjecture to judge from the picture by hunting the gallery close to our door. Well, man might suppose that the scapegoat they chose was a long way from being their choicest Angora. In fact, I should think he was one of their weediest. 'Tis a rule that obtains, no matter who reigns, when making a sacrifice, offer the seediest, which accounts for a theory known to my hearers who live in the wild by the wattle beguiled, that a stag makes quite good enough mutton for shearers. Be that as it may, as each year passed away, a scapegoat was led to the desert and freighted with sin. The poor brute must have been overweighted and left there to die as his fancy dictated. The day it has come, with trumpet and drum, with pomp and solemnity fit for the tomb. They led the old billy goat off to his doom. On every hand a reverend band, prophets and preachers, the elders stand, and the oldest rabbi with tear in his eye delivers a sermon to all standing by. We haven't his name, whether Cohen or Harrisy, no doubt was the poisonous kind of a Pharisee. The sermon was marked by a deal of humility, and pointed the fact with no end of ability, that being a Gentile's no mark of gentility, and according to Samuel would certainly down you well. Then shedding his coat, he approaches the goat, and while a red fillet he carefully pins on him, confesses the whole of the Israelite sins in him. With eloquent burst he exhorts the accursed, go forth in the desert, perish in woe. The sins of the people are whiter than snow. Then signs to his pal for it, let the brute go. That pal, as I've heard, is an elegant word derived from the Persian palaker or palager, and the scapegoat strains and tugs at the reins. The rabbi yells rapidly, let her go, Gallagher. The animal, freed from all restraint, lowered his head, made a kind of feint, and charged straight at the elderly saint. It's so fierce his attack, and so very severe it quite floored the rabbi, who, ere he could fly, was rammed on the back, but just near it. The scapegoat he storted and wildly cavorted, a light-hearted antelope, out on the ramp. Then stopped, looked around, and got the lay of the ground, and made a beeline back again to the camp. The elderly priest, as he noticed the beast so gallantly making his way to the east, says he from the tents, I may never roam again, but that there old billy goat ain't going home again. He's hurrying too. This never will do. Can't somebody stop him? I'm all of a stew. After all our confessions so openly granted, he's taking our sins back to where they're not wanted. We've come all this distance, salvation to Winnegog. If he takes home our sins, it'll burst up the synagogue. He turned to an acolyte who was making his backalight, a fleet-footed youth who would run like a crackerlight. Run, Abraham, run! Hunt him over the plain and drive back the brute to the desert again. The Sphinx is a-watching the pyramids frown on you from those granite tops. 40 centuries look down on you. Run, Abraham, run, I'll bet half a crown on you. So Abraham ran like a man, did he go for it? But the goat made it clear each time he drew near that he had what the racing men call too much toe for him. The crowd with great eagerness studied the race. Great Scott, isn't Abraham forcing the pace? And don't go the goat spiel. It is hard to keep sight on him. The sins of the Israelites ride mighty light on him. The scapegoat is leading a furlong or more, and Abraham's tying. I'll lay 6-4. He rolls on his stride. He's done, there's no question. But here the old rabbi brought up a suggestion. 'Twas strange that in racing he showed so much cunning. It's a hard race, said he, and I think it would be a good thing for someone to take up the running. As soon as said as done, they started to run, the priests and the deacons, strong runners and weak uns, all reckoned ere long to come with the brute, and so the old boiling set off in pursuit. And then it came out, and the rabble and rout streamed over the desert with many a shout. The rabbi, so elderly, grave and patrician, had been in his hot youth a bold metallician, and offered in gasps as they merrily spieled, any price, Abraham, evens the field. Alas, the whole clan, they raced and they ran, and Abraham proved him an eventime man. But the goat, now a speck they could hardly keep their eyes on, stretched out in his stride in a style most surprising, and vanished long o'er the distant horizon. Away in the camp, the bill sticker's tramp is heard as he wanders with paste brush and notices, and paling the wall, and he plasters them all. I wonder how things getting on with the goat, he says, then pulls out his bills. Use Solomon's pills. Great stoning of Christians to all devout views. You all must bring a stone. Great sport will be shown. Enormous attractions and prices as usual. Roll up to the hall, wives and children and all. For naught the most delicate feelings to hurt is meant. Here his eyes opened wide, for close by his side was the scapegoat and eating the latest advertisement. One shriek from the burst, you creature accursed, and he ran from the spot like one fearing the worst. His language was chaste, and he fled in his haste, but the goat stayed behind him and scoffed up the paste. With downcast head and sorrowful tread, the people came back from the desert in dread. The goat, was he back there? Had anyone heard of him? In very short order they got plenty of word of him. In fact, as they wandered by street, lane and hall, the trail of the serpent was over them all. A poor little child, knocked out stiff in the gutter, proclaimed that the scapegoat was bred for a butter. The bill sticker's pail told a sorrowful tale. The scapegoat has licked it as dry as a nail. He raced through the houses and frightened his spouses, but his latest achievement most anger arouses. For while they were searching and scratching their craniums, one little Ben Albed, who looked like the flower bed, discovered him eating the rabbi's geraniums. A moral. The moral is patent to all the beholders. Don't shift your own sins onto other folks' shoulders. Be kind to dumb creatures and never abuse them, nor curse them, nor kick, nor spitefully use them. Take their lives if needs must when it comes to the worst, but don't let them perish of hunger or thirst. Remember, no matter how far you may roam, that dogs, goats and chickens, it's simply the dickens, their talent stupendous for getting back home. Your sins without doubt will find you out, and so will a scapegoat. He's bound to achieve it, but die in the wilderness. Don't you believe it? The old scapegoat, he sure did it tough, but I have a story about a happy old billy goat, or a clever one, a cagey old billy goat. I wrote this one during the week. Language warning. Yeah, comes with a language and concept warning. So, yeah, anyway, don't be offended. If you are, huff. I have to tell you a story about an old billy goat who climbed up a mountain, and on his back was a boat. He got to the top and he wasn't a dope. He got into the boat and slid down the snowy slope. He slid off a cliff and went flying through the air, but he knew where he'd land, so he really didn't care. As he landed in the stream and he floated away, but he knew where he'd land, so he really didn't care. As he landed in a stream and he floated away, day became night, then night turned into day. He watched from the boat as he sat on his arse. Day became night, and then night turned into day. He watched from the boat as he sat on his arse. The stream became a river in a valley of grass. He paddled to the bank, tied the boat to a tree, which for a goat with hooves isn't at all easy. He ate juicy green grass till his belly was full, lay under a tree and with hooves had a pull. With plenty of time and nothing to lose, closed his eyes for some shut-eye and a snooze. Had a sexual dream about a field of fannies. When he awoke, he was surrounded by nannies. He was a cagey old billy goat, and he took his time on every single nanny. Had a calculated climb up a mountain with a boat and a calculated hope. Found paradise with green grass and nannies to grow. Well, 9 months later, things really hit the skids. All the nannies had babies and he was surrounded by kids. I have to tell you a story about an old billy goat who escaped from a valley down a river in a boat. Phew. Yeah, all right. What have I got for you next? Clancy of the Overflow by Banjo Paterson. I don't know whether to sing it or to just do it seriously or not. I think I'll just do it in a poetry storytelling voice. This was first published on the 21st of December 1889 in the Bulletin. Clancy, the Overflow. I had written him a letter, which I had, for want of better knowledge, sent to where I met him down the Lachlan years ago. He was shearing when I knew him, so I sent the letter to him just on spec, addressed as follows: Clancy of the Overflow. And an answer came directed, in a writing unexpected, and I think the same was written with a thumbnail dipped in tar. 'Twas his shearing mate who wrote it, and verbatim, I will quote it. Clancy's gone to Queensland droving, and we don't know where he are. In my wild, erratic fancy, visions come to me of Clancy gone a droving down the Cooper, where the western drovers go. As the stocker slowly stringing, Clancy rides behind him singing. The drover's life has pleasures that the townsfolk never know. And the bush hath friends to meet him, and their kindly voices greet him in the murmur of the breezes and the river in its bars. And he sees the vision splendid of the sunlit plains extended, and at night the wondrous glory of the everlasting stars. I am sitting in my dingy little office, where a stingy ray of sunlight struggles feebly down between the houses tall, and the fetid air and gritty of the dusty, dirty city, through the open window floating, spreads its foulness over all. And in place of lowing cattle, I can hear the fiendish rattle of the tramways and the buses making hurry down the street, and the language uninviting of the gutter children fighting comes fitfully and faintly through the ceaseless tramp of feet. And the hurrying people daunt me, and their pallid faces haunt me as they shoulder one another in their rush and nervous haste, with their eager eyes and greedy, and their stunted forms and weedy, for the townsfolk have no time to grow, they have no time to waste. And I somehow rather fancy that I'd like to change with Clancy, like to take a turn at droving where the seasons come and go, while he faced the round eternal of the cash book and the journal. But I doubt he'd suit the office, Clancy of the Overflow. It's one of, Banjo's most famous poems. All right, the next one I've got for you is called Our New Horse. The boys had come back from the races, all silent and down on their luck. They'd backed them straight out and for places, but never a winner they struck. They lost their good money on slogan and fell most uncommonly flat, when partner, the pride of the bogan, was beaten by aristocrat. And one said, I move that instanter we sell out our horses and quit. The brutes ought to win in a canter. Such trials they do when they're fit. The last one they ran was a snorter, a gallop to gladden one's heart. 2:12 for 1.25 miles and finished as straight as a dart. And then, when I think that they're ready to win me a nice little swag, they're licked like the veriest Neddy. They're licked from the fall of the flag. The mare held her own to the stable. She died out the nothing at that. And partner, he never seemed able to pace it with aristocrat. And times have been bad, and the seasons don't promise to be of the best. In short, boys, there's plenty of reasons for giving the racing a rest. The mare can be kept on the station, her breeding is good as can be, but partner, his next destination is rather a trouble to me. We can't sell him here, for they know him as well as the clerk of the course. He's raced and won races till blow him. He's done as a handicap horse, a jady, uncertain performer. They wait him right out of the hunt and clap it on warmer and warmer whenever he gets near the front. It's no use to paint him or dot him or put any fake on his brand. The bushmen are smart, and they'd spot him in any sale yard in the land. The folk about here could all tell him, could swear to each separate hare. Let us send him to Sydney and sell him. There's plenty of jugginses there. We'll call him a maiden and treat 'em to trials. We'll open their eyes. We'll run their best horses and beat 'em. And then won't they think him a prize? I pity the fellow that buys him. He'll find in a very short space, no matter how highly he tries him, the beggar won't race in a race. Next week, under seller and buyer, appeared in the Daily Gazette a racehorse for sale, and a flyer has never been started as yet. A trial will show what his pace is. The buyer can get him in light and win all the handicap races. Apply here before Wednesday night. He sold for 130 because of the gallop he had one morning with Bluefish and Bertie, and Donkey licked both of them bad. And when the old horse had departed, the life on the station grew tame. The racetrack was dull and deserted. The boys had gone back on the game. The winter rolled by and the station was green in the garland of spring. A spirit of glad exultation awoke in each animate thing, and all by the love, the old longing, broke out in the breasts of the boys. The visions of racing came thronging with all its delirious joys. The rushing of floods in their courses, the rattle of rain on the roofs recalled the fierce rush of the horses, the thunder of galloping hooves. And soon one broke out, I can suffer no longer the life of a slug. The man that don't race is a duffer. Let's have one more run for the mug. Why, everything races, no matter, whatever its method may be. The waterfowl hold a regatta. The possums run heats up a tree. The emus are constantly sprinting a handicap out on the plain. It seems like all nature was hinting 'tis time to be at it again. The cockatoo parrots are talking of races to faraway lands. The native companions are walking a go as you please on the sands. The little foals gallop for pastime. The wallabies race down the gap. Let's try it once more for the last time. Bring out the old jacket and cap. And now, for a horse, we might try one of those that are bred on the place, but I think it better to buy one, a horse that has proved he can race. Let us send down to Sydney to Skinner, a thorough good judge who can ride, and ask him to buy us a spinner to clean out the whole countryside. They wrote him a letter as follows. We want you to buy us a horse. He must have the speed to catch swallows and stamina with it, of course. The price ain't a thing that'll grieve us. It's getting a bad annoys the undersigned blokes and believers. We're yours to a cinder, the boys. He answered, I've brought you a hummer, a horse that has never been raced. I saw him run over the drummer. He held him outclassed and outpaced. His breeding's not known, but they state he is born of a thoroughbred strain. I paid them 180 and started the horse in the train. They met him, alas, that these verses aren't up to the subject's demands, can't set forth their eloquent curses, for partner was back in their hands. They went in to meet him in gladness, they opened his box with delight. A silent procession of sadness, they crept to the station at night, and life has grown dull on the station. The boys are all silent and slow. Their work is a daily vexation, and sport is unknown to them now. Whenever they think how they stranded, they squeal like guinea pigs, squeal. They built their own hook and were landed with £50 loss on the deal. They sold their horse and they bought it back for more expensive or whatever. Oh dear. Well, The Man from Snowy River. This is probably one of Banjo Paterson's more famous poems, one of his most famous. And this was published in the Bulletin first on the 26th of April, 1890. The Man from Snowy River. There was movement at the station, for the word had passed around that the colt from Old Regret had got away and had joined the wild bush horses. He was worth £1,000, so all the cracks had gathered to the fray. All the tried and noted riders from the stations near and far had mustered at the homestead overnight, for the bushmen love hard riding where the wild bush horses are, and the stock horse snuffs the battle with delight. There was Harrison, who made his pile when Pardon won the cup, the old man with his hair as white as snow, but few could ride beside him when his blood was fairly up. He would go wherever horse and man could go. And Clancy of the Overflow came down to lend a hand. No better horseman ever held the reins, for never a horse could throw him while the saddle girths would stand. He learnt to ride while droving on the plains. And one was there, a stripling, on a small and weedy beast. He was something like a racehorse, undersized, with a touch of Timor pony, 3 parts thoroughbred at least, and such as are by mountain horsemen prized. He was hard and tough and wiry, just the sort that won't say die. There was courage in his quick, impatient tread, and he bore the badge of gameness in his bright and fiery eye, and the proud and lofty carriage of his head. But still so slight and weedy, one would doubt his power to stay, and the old man said, "That horse will never do. For a long and tiring gallop, lad, you'd better stop away. Those hills are far too rough for such as you." So he waited, sad and wistful. Only Clancy stood his friend. "I think we ought to let him come," he said. "I warrant he'll be with us when he's wanted at the end, for both his horse and he are mountain bred. He hails from Snowy River, up by Kosciuszko's side, where the hills are twice as steep and twice as rough, where a horse's hooves strike firelight from the flintstones every stride, and the man that holds his own is good enough. And the Snowy River riders on their mountains make their home, where the river runs those giant hills between. I have seen full many horsemen since I first commenced to roam, but nowhere yet such horsemen have I seen." So he went. They found the horses by the big mimosa clump. They raced away toward the mountain's brow, and the old man gave his orders. "Boys, go at 'em from the jump. No use to try for fancy riding now. And Clancy, you must wheel 'em. Try and wheel 'em to the right. Ride boldly, lad, and never fear the spills, for never yet was rider that could keep the mob in sight if once they gain the shelter of those hills." So Clancy rode to wheel 'em. He was racing on the wing, where the best and boldest riders take their place. And he raced his stock horse past them, and he made the rangers ring with the stock whip as he met them face to face. Then they halted for a moment while he swung the dreaded lash, but they saw their well-loved mountain full in view, and they charged beneath the stock whip with a sharp and sudden dash, and off into the mountain scrub they flew. Then fast the horsemen followed, where the gorges deep and black resounded to the thunder of their tread, and the stock whips woke the echoes, and they fiercely answered back from cliffs and crags that beetled overhead. And upward, ever upward, the wild horses held their way, where mountain ash and courage on grew wide. And the old man muttered fiercely, "We may bid the mob good day, and no man can hold 'em down the other side." When they reached the mountain's summit, even Clancy took a pull. It well might make the boldest hold their breath. The wild hop scrub grew thickly, and the hidden ground was full of wombat holes, and any slip was death. But the man from Snowy River let the pony have his head, and he swung his stock whip round and gave a cheer, and he raced him down the mountain like a torrent in its bed, while the others stood and watched in very fear. He sent the flintstones flying, but the pony kept his feet. He cleared the fallen timber in its stride, and the man from Snowy River never shifted in his seat. It was grand to see that mountain horseman ride. Through the stringy barks and saplings on the rough and broken ground, down the hillside at a racing pace he went, and he never drew the bridle till he landed safe and sound at the bottom of that terrible descent. He was right among the horses as they climbed the further hill, and the watchers on the mountain, standing mute, saw him ply the stock whip fiercely. He was right among them still as he raced across the clearing in pursuit. Then they lost him for a moment where two mountain gullies met in the ranges, but a final glimpse reveals on a dim and distant hillside the wild horses racing yet, with the man from Snowy River at their heels. And he ran them single-handed till their sides were white with foam. He followed like a bloodhound on their track till they halted, cowed and beaten, and then he turned their heads for home, and alone and unassisted brought them back. But his hardy mountain pony, he could scarcely raise a trot. He was blood from hip to shoulder from the spur, but his pluck was still undaunted, and his courage fiery hot, for never yet was mountain horse a cur. And down by Kosciuszko, where the pine-clad ridges raise their torn and rugged battlements on high, where the air is clear as crystal and the white stars fairly blaze at midnight in the cold and frosty sky, and where around the Overflow the reed beds sweep and sway to breezes and the rolling plains are wide, the man from Snowy River is a household word today, and the stockmen tell the story of his ride. The Man from Snowy River by Banjo Paterson. The Hypnotist. Oh, this is fantastic. A man once read with the mind surprised of the way that people were hypnotized. By waving hands you produced, forsooth, a kind of trance where men told the truth. His mind was filled with wondering doubt. He grabbed his hat and started out. He walked the street and he made a set at the first half dozen folk he met. He tranced them all, and without a joke, 'twas much as follows the subjects spoke. The first man. I'm a doctor, London made. Listen to me and you'll hear displayed a few of the tricks of the doctor's trade. 'Twill sometimes chance when a patient's ill that a dose or draught or a lightning pill, a little too strong or a little too hot, will work its way to a vital spot, and then I watch with a sickly grin while the patient passes his counters in, but while he's gone with his fleeting breath, I certify that the cause of death was something Latin and something long, and who is to say that the doctor's wrong? So I go my way with a stately tread, while my patients sleep with the dreamless dead. That's dark, isn't it? Next, please. I am a barrister wigged and gowned, of stately presence and look profound. Listen a while till I show you round. When courts are sitting and work is flush, I hurry about in a frantic rush. I take your brief and look to see that the same is marked with a thumping fee. But just as your case is drawing near, I bob serenely and disappear, and away in another court I lurk, while a junior barrister does your work. And I ask my fee with a courtly grace, although I never came near the case. The loss means ruin to you, maybe, but nevertheless I must have my fee. For the lawyer laughs in his cruel sport, while his clients march to the bankrupt court. Third man. I am a banker, wealthy and bold, a solid man, and I keep my hold over a pile of the public's gold. I'm as skilled can be on every matter on LSD. I count the money, and night by night I balance up to a farthing right. In sooth, 'twould a stranger's soul perplex my double entry and double checks. Yet it sometimes happened by some strange crook that a ledger keeper will take his hook with a couple of 100,000 quid, and no one can tell how the thing was did. Fourth man. I'm an editor, bold and free behind the great impersonal we. I hold the power of the mystic three. What scoundrel ever would dare to hint that anything crooked appears in print? Perhaps an actor is all the rage. He struts his hour on the mimic stage. With his skill he interprets all the scenes, and yet next morning I give him beans. I slate his show from the floats to flies, because the beggar won't advertise. And sometimes columns of print appear about mine, and makes it clear that the same is all that one's heart could wish, a dozen ounces to every dish. But the reason we print these statements fine is the editor's uncle owns the mine. And the last straw. A preacher and I take my stand in pulpit decked with a gown in hand, to point the way to a better land. With sanctimonious reverent look I read it out of the sacred book, and he who would open the golden door must give his all to the starving poor. But I vary the practice to some extent by investing money at 12%. And after I've preached for a decent while, I clear for home with a lordly pile. I frighten my congregation well with fear of torment and threats of hell, although I know that scientists can't find that any such place exists, and when they prove it beyond mistake that the world took millions of years to make and never was built by the seventh day, I say in a pained and insulted way that Thomas also presumed to doubt, and thus I do rub my opponents out. For folks may widen their mental rage, but priest and parson, they never change. With dragging footsteps and downcast head, the hypnotizer went home to bed, and since that very successful test, he is given the magic art arrest. Had he tried the ladies and worked it right, what curious tales might have come to light. Published in the Bulletin on the 19th of July. Next one we got for you is called Gilhooley's Estate, a ballad concerning the amalgamation of the legal profession. Oh, Mr. Gilhooley, he turned up his toes, as most of us do, soon or late, and Jones was a lawyer, as everyone knows, so they took him Gilhooley's estate. Gilhooley in life had been living so free, 'twas thought his possessions were great. So Jones, with a smile, says, there's many a fee for me in Gilhooley's estate. They made out a list of his property fine. It totalled 1,008. But the debts were 999, the debts of Gilhooley's estate. So Mrs. Gilhooley says, Jones, my dear man, my children have little to eat. Just keep the expenses as low as you can against poor Gilhooley's estate. So a barrister man with a wig on his head and a brief in his hand, quite elate, went up to the court where they bury the dead, just to move in Gilhooley's estate. But His Honour the Judge said, I think that the gates must be called to probate. Ex parte poke horny, it's clear to the point of Gilhooley's estate. I order a suit to be bought just to try if this is correct that I state. A nice friendly suit, and the cost by and by must be borne by Gilhooley's estate. So Mrs. Gilhooley says, Jones, you'll appear. Them barristers' fees is too great. The suit is but friendly. Attorneys, my dear, can't be heard in a Gilhooley's estate. From barristers' court there's a mighty hurrah, arises both early and late. It's only the whoop of the junior bar dividing Gilhooley's estate. And that was published in the Bulletin on the 23rd of August, 1890. Here we go. The next one's called Those Names. So just I'll give you a bit of a overview of what the words are. Ringer is a faster shearer in the shed. The tar boy applies the tar or antiseptic to the sheep that have been cut during shearing. The slushy is the cook's assistant. The picker up is a hand who picks up the shorn fleece and places it on the table for sorting. And the penner is a hand who keeps the sheep pens full of sheep. Those names. By Banjo Paterson. The shearers sat in the firelight, hearty and hale and strong, after the hard day's shearing passed the joke along. The ringer that shore 100 as they never were shorn before, and the novice who toiling bravely had tommy-hawked half a score. The tar boy, the cooker, the slushy, the sweeper that swept the board, the picker up and the penner, and with the rest of the shearing horde. There were men from inland stations where skies like a furnace glow, and men from the snowy river, the land of the frozen snow. There were swarthy Queensland drovers who reckoned all land by miles, and farmers' sons from the Murray, where many a vineyard smiles. They started at telling stories when they wearied of cards and games, and to give those stories a flavour, they threw in some local names. A man from the bleak Monaro, away on the tableland, he fixed his eyes on the ceiling and started to play his hand. He told them of Adjintooth Bong, where the pine-clad mountains freeze, and the weight of the snow in summer breaks branches off the trees. And as he warmed to the business, he let them have it strong. Nimity Bell, Conago, Weo, and Bongongalong. He lingered over them fondly because they recalled to mind a thought of the old bush homestead and the girl that he left behind. And then the shearers all sat silent till a man in the corner rose. Said he, "I've travelled a plenty, but I've never heard names like those. Out in the western districts on the Castle Ray, most of the names are easy, short for a man to say. You've heard of Mungry Bambone and the Gundabluey Pine, Quabotha, Grillambone and Terramunga Mine, Quambone, Unoni, Harina, Weewa and Bunty Joe." But the wrist of the shearers stopped him. "For the sake of your jaw, go slow. If you reckon those names are short ones out where such names prevail, just try and remember some long ones before you begin the tale." And the man from the western district, though never a word he said, just winked with his dexter eyelid, and then he retired to bed. And that was first published in the Bulletin on the 20th of September, 1890. Oh, here's an interesting one. Because Banjo did go to, what do you call that place over there? New Zealand, yeah, that place. The Maori Pig Market by Banjo Paterson. In distant New Zealand, whose tresses of gold the billows are ceaselessly combing, away in a village all tranquil and old, I came on a market where porkers were sold, a market for pigs in the gloaming. And Maoris in plenty, in picturesque rig, the lands of their forefathers roaming, were weighing their swine with a little or big, for purchases paid by the weight of the pig in the gloaming. And one mighty chieftain I grieve to relate, the while that his porker was foaming and squealing like 50 that Maoris sedate, he leant on the pig just to add to its weight, he leant on the pig in the gloaming. Alas, for the buyer, an Irishman stout, O'Grady I think his cognomen, perceived all his doings, and giving a shout with the butt of his whip, laid him carefully out by the side of his pig in the gloaming. A terrible scrimmage did straightway begin, and I thought it was time to be homing, for Maoris and Irish were fighting like sin, midst war cries of "Pakia, brother Shane," as I fled from the spot in the gloaming. Interesting, hey? Yeah. All right. I'm going to call it a night there. Thank you very much for joining us on Chillin Tuesday on this 18th of June 2024. I'm Thundercloud. Don't forget, give it a thumbs up. Look up the events. Come to Ash Grunwald on Sunday this week. It's going to be awesome. Yes, it will. And don't forget, every Wednesday night, we've got our open mic here. You're welcome to come and read your poems, sing a song, even bring a guitar if you want to play. Yes, anyone's welcome. And what else we have? On Saturday morning, we've got the Gyra Market here as well. Gyra Market every Saturday morning from 8:30 to 12:30. And if you want to have a stall, it's only $10 to set up a stall here as well. It's all weather, so it's indoors, and it's here at the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame. The best little market in Gyra. It's the only one, yeah. Hey, I'm Thundercloud. That's it for Chillin Tuesday. Washing away the garbage, leaving rainbows after rains. We've had fun. We've had linguistic games, something like that. My mum calls me James, and I'll see you tomorrow night for Wednesday Words. See you later. Boom.